Today, I'm going to talk about one of the most important things you got to be doing to be a long-term winning poker player. It's actually incredibly simple, yet I talk to so many people that have been playing for over 10 years and still aren't doing this one basic simple thing, and that's writing down your hand histories for spots you weren't sure what to do, or spots you found difficult at the poker table. Why is it so important? Well, so many times I hear people trying to repeat a hand history of a spot they weren't sure what to do, and they can't remember the details, or sometimes they do remember the details, but they're leaving out vital information, and that's a big sign that they're not paying attention to incredibly important information that they need to be using to range their opponents. For example, sometimes someone's telling a hand history about how, they called the 3-bet and then the flop came this. Whoa. Well, what position, right? If you were under the gun and the button 3-bet you, their 3-bet range is gonna look very different than if you were in the cutoff and it 3-bet you. Also, what about the stack sizes? If we're talking 30 big blinds deep, they're gonna have stuff like Queen 9 suited and so on in their range. Whereas if we're talking 100 big blinds deep, they're much more likely to have hands like 6-7 suited, even pocket 6s and 7s in their range that they're never gonna have 30 big blinds deep. Secondly, it is super important that when you write these hand histories down, you don't want it to take forever and distract you from the table. So it's really important to use syntax, leave out, big long sentences, and instead just include the really necessary information. So many times I see these big, long, ugly blocks of text, and it takes forever to read, and it takes a lot of focus to read. If you're trying to get feedback from people, you're much more likely to get feedback if it's nice and easy to read. So how do you make it easy to read? Well, first of all, you should talk in big blinds so that you don't make people do the math, or you don't have to do the math to figure out the big blinds and the betting percentages and so on. Next, you want to just include the necessary information. So you don't need to say the first guy raised to 12,500 and then the next 3 guys folded. Like, that's way too long, right? Just say UTG, 2BB, cutoff, call. That's it, right? We could assume all those people folded, and we don't need big long sentences. You could see here an example of how I write a hand history, and I will also leave a link to this document in the description. I will also leave a link in the description to a video of how to write hand histories and discuss hand histories. You're welcome to check that out. Another cool little hack you could use is go to the App Store and download this hand history poker keyboard, where you can literally toggle your phone keyboard back and forth between a poker keyboard or a normal keyboard, and that will help make it quicker writing some of the syntax down. Other good tools you can have are Holdem Resources Calculator and GTO Wizard. The first program is more for pre-flop situations. Sometimes a chart assumes that the player is playing exactly like the charts, and that's not always the case. So Holdem Resources Calculator actually allows you to adjust your opponent's range of what they're opening with or what they might be 3-betting with, and then it will actually tell you the answer of how you should play against that adjusted range. GTO Wizard is more of a post-flop solver program. It's actually pretty easy to use, super powerful program. I don't recommend you jump into all those right away if you haven't even been writing your hand histories down. If you're playing online poker, you don't need to document your hands on a notepad. Instead, you should just be using a poker tracking tool, something like Poker Tracker, Holdem Manager. Even if you don't want to use the HUD where it shows you all the stats because that's confusing, that's fine, but it's still worth having those programs just so that you have the database of all your hands and you could tag them and review them anytime you want, by yourself, with other people, with a coach, and so on. First, just start with the next tournament you play, go and write down at least 5 hand histories of spots you weren't sure what to do, and then find a group of people where you can start talking hands with. If you can just start doing those 2 things regularly over the course of the next month and you're in a nice routine, then it makes sense to jump into that next step and start considering those programs if you feel like you're ready for them. Don't overwhelm yourself. Start with one thing at a time. Now that you're writing your hand histories down, how do you analyze them? Well, the first and most basic way is to go through it yourself, because often when you're not under time pressure or just pressure at the table, you're more likely to be able to come to the conclusion when you have some more time to think through the spot. If you're not able to do it just from that, that's when you jump into your tools. So the first tool for me is just checking pre-flop charts. If it's a pre-flop spot, it's very easy. You gotta have pre-flop charts. I always tell my students, it's like being a real estate agent and not having an MLS account. It's just the most basic thing you gotta have if you're gonna be successful as a poker player. Next is talking hands with other players. This is arguably one of the most important things, and it's absolutely free. I know a lot of people who don't play for a living, don't have friends that take it as serious, so it's hard to find people to talk to, but you gotta put yourself out there. The next time you're at a tournament, try to find people that maybe you relate to, you have some things in common, you get along with, and who are also interested in working on their game. If you are still finding that difficult, I have a student Discord group. I will leave the invite to that in the description here. You could go in there and introduce yourself, talk hands with other players, and this is something that needs to be part of your regular routine. I credit where I've gotten to in poker from talking hands with other players, that if I didn't have that opportunity, then there's no chance I would be where I got in my career. Next, I want to talk about when should you study your hands. Don't do them while you're at the table. I've made the mistake of feeling this pressure that, oh, I need to like figure out what the spot was right away or else I feel kind of anxious. I often am doing that when I'm not making enough time to study later in the week, because I feel like, oh, if I don't figure this out right now or ask someone or check it, I'm never gonna get to it. And my doc is just gonna sit there and get old. So I found that I really just need to block off half a day for studying every single week. And now that I am doing that, I don't feel that pressure. So when I'm at the table, I just know, all right, it's in my doc, I'm for sure gonna get to it, and I can get back to focusing on the table, because you don't want to miss reads or get out of that flow state. Really paying attention to your table is the most important thing when you're playing live poker. I want to talk a little bit about how do you squeeze in time to study, and what does that look like when you have a full-time job or a business or a family. I know that can be super tough to do. You need a minimum of 5 hours a week dedicated to improving your game if you want to stay ahead of the curve. So what that can look like is 1 hour of reviewing your own hands that you documented on your own, another hour of discussing hands with other players, whether it's your own hands or just engaging in questions they had about their hands, 2 hours in reviewing some sort of learning content. That could be a training video, a book, working with the coach, and so on, and 1 hour miscellaneous. And it's okay if you can't do that every single week, but if you can do that most weeks, I'm confident you can stay ahead of the curve. As you become more advanced or you just have more time, you might want to add stuff like spending some time reviewing hands on a solver, playing with Holdem resources calculator, taking some quizzes, and so on. But the game is always changing. There's always new tools coming out, new study programs, new books, and so on. And just because someone tells you the right thing today, in 2 years, those might not be relevant. So you want to hear about these tools and these things before other people do. And that's where being part of these groups, being part of the Discord group, and so on, you're going to learn about those things before other people do. It's really all about setting up the right learning environment, blocking out the hours throughout your week, and then just sticking to that routine, and that's how you're gonna be a long-term winning poker player. So just to recap everything we talked about, make sure you are documenting your hands every tournament you play. Write down the spots you weren't sure about. Make sure you're including the right details. Next, you wanna start forming a group of people that you can talk to hands with, or get in a Discord group. Like I said, you could join mine. Check the link for the invite in the description here. Next is block out the hours in your week so that you can spend 5 hours towards studying poker. If you enjoyed this video, definitely hit the like and subscribe button. Also, hit me in the comments. Let me know what else you want to learn about. I'm planning on making these videos more regularly, and my goal with these videos is to help you hit your goals in poker. So I want to learn about what those goals are and what you need help with, and I'm along for the journey with you guys. Hope to even meet some of you in that Discord group. All right, peace out, everyone. Good luck on the felt.